Hey everybody, tonight what I want to do is tell you a little bit about some of the books that I got to help me transition into data science. These are books that covered topics in data science, machine learning, and generally just artificial intelligence. For those of you who may not be familiar with my channel, I did a physics PhD from the University of California, Irvine. I graduated in 2023, but it was around that time when I realized that I didn't want to continue on the path of becoming an academic professor and realized I needed to get a job outside of the university setting. And so I needed to transition into data science somehow. And in that journey, I picked up quite a few books. Now, I don't think you need all of these books to transition into data science successfully, but I'm someone who likes to collect books, and so I have a plethora of them that I'm going to share with you today. So we're going to start with this book right here, Becoming a Data Head. It's by Alex J. Gutman and Jordan Goldmeyer, and the subtitle is How to Think, Speak, and Understand Data Science, Statistics, and Machine Learning. And so the main topics of this book here, as the title suggests, are on topics in data science, and it's really a light introduction to data science and machine learning and all these different fancy buzzwords, because I wouldn't say that it is a textbook. It really isn't. It's more of a book that introduces you to the concepts of data, of why data is important, why is probability important, why do we need to use statistics, and what are some fallacies we could fall into if we don't understand our data really well. It also goes over what it says here, the data scientist's toolbox, and goes through some basic models that a data scientist should know how to use and work with, such as regression and classification. These are also the building blocks for models in machine learning, and so on and so forth. So I think this is a really good book for someone who, like me, wasn't really aware of what deep learning or data science really was, and wants to get an introduction that gives you case studies of how data science is important in our day-to-day lives. It covers some examples from NASA, for example. So for like the Challenger disaster in 1986, and how data in that case could have been critical in understanding the flaws in the rocket that eventually blew up and took the lives of the astronauts. So really interesting book. I would recommend it as a introductory book for someone who really wants to consider data scientist as a transition and get a feel if the subjects in this book really interest you. So that's Becoming a Data Head. Next up, we have Think Like a Data Scientist by Brian Godsey. And this book is, again, much like the previous book, is a book that isn't really a textbook, but it's more of a book that gives you the fundamental concepts of data science. And not only that, it also gives you lessons that Brian himself learned as a new data scientist. He covers the steps and the methods you would probably want to follow if you were an active data scientist, in terms of going from data wrangling to data assessment, developing a plan, and ultimately building a product that you're going to share with people at your company. Because as a data scientist, you're typically going to be working with people who may not be as accustomed to data as you are, and it's really important for you to communicate your information in a way that can help the stakeholders of the project, whether that be your bosses or clients that your company is trying to satisfy. It's really important that you are able to disseminate the information you find from your data science and present it in a readable and presentable way. And so I think this book is really good for explaining the process, as well as the kinds of questions you might run into. And throughout the book, Brian goes through different steps in the process. So this chart kind of comes up, well, not this chart, but this diagram comes up quite a bit. The set goals, explore, wrangle, assess in the prepare stage, the build stage is next, and then the finish stage is last. And so he gives some case studies of projects that he himself conducted when he was in graduate school. And I think, again, this book really gives you a sense of what does a data scientist do. Again, I should also emphasize that data scientist is a very vague and general term. A lot of data scientists do different things. I mean, I'm technically a data scientist, but if you ask someone maybe at another company, organization, it might sound very different to what I do. So again, really good book, I think, if you want to get an insight of what possibly a data scientist can get themselves into. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach, the 4th edition by Stuart Russell and Peter Norvig. So this book is a classic textbook in artificial intelligence. It's been updated, as I've said, 4 times, and I really, really like this book. This book is so comprehensive, so long, but really covers all of the bare essentials that you need to progress in the field of artificial intelligence. It provides mathematical background, as well as an extensive list of citations in terms of papers that are referenced in the field, that if you want to get more acquainted with certain topics in all of these different subjects, it's just, it has that information there for you. Now, the one thing I really like about this book in particular is the last 2 chapters and the conclusions, because I think these last 2 chapters, 28 and 29, are actually very accessible to anyone who is interested in artificial intelligence. I would actually maybe suggest reading them closer to the beginning of the book, even though they are towards the end, because it goes through philosophy, ethics, and safety, as well as the future of AI. I think they have so many interesting ideas and predictions as to how artificial intelligence can affect our lives. And obviously, Stuart and Peter are titans in the field. Peter Norvig, actually, I believe, was the head of the computational sciences division at NASA Ames, which is where I work now, which I didn't know that, which is really cool. And if you want to get into artificial intelligence, just get a really broad, sense of what the field is like, then you just have to get this book, because it really, really goes through a lot of the fundamental topics. The one thing I really like about its chapters is that they always end with a summary, as well as a bibliography and a historical notes section. So the way I typically read this book is that I'll typically just go to the end of a chapter, I'll read the summary, I'll read the bibliography, and just get a lot of the vocabulary words, which are all bolded, and get a sense of what this chapter is about before I really delve into the chapter and looking at all the diagrams and things of that nature. So this is just an absolute must-get if you are serious about becoming an artificial intelligence expert. The next book I want to talk about is Ace the Data Science Interview, 201 Real Interview Questions Asked by FANG, Tech Startups, and Wall Street. It's by Kevin Huo and Nick Singh, who are both ex-Facebook. One of them is now on Wall Street, and the other is now a career coach. Now, I got this book because obviously I expected to get some data science interviews, and I wanted a book that could help me ace that interview. Now, to be honest, the interview I ended up having really didn't cover stuff in this book, but it was kind of a special case. Nevertheless, if I did have a traditional data science interview, as they cover in this book, I think I would have been well prepared had I studied all the stuff in this book. And as you can see from the table of contents, it doesn't just cover the technical side of things with like probability, stats, machine learning, SQL, and so on. It also covers career advice and how to make portfolio projects, which are important to showcase to potential recruiters and employers, how to cold email people, which is an important skill to have if you're a working professional, as well as how to make a good resume. Now, to be honest, in 2024, I don't know so much about how well the resume tips are going to work these days, just because I know there's just a ton of filtering that goes through the resume checking process for these companies, and it's really hard to stand out just by a resume alone. Nevertheless, I think if you want to give yourself the best possible chance, it behooves you to have a good resume, and I think they do have good principles as to how to do that. And as the cover of the book suggests, they have a lot of questions in this book. So, for example, I'll just show you the questions here. They have sort of easy, medium, and hard questions in the book that cover a broad range of topics that you saw in the table of contents. And these are taken from real interviews. Some of them are taken from like quantitative finance interviews, as well as data science interviews. So I think it's just a great resource overall for anyone who wants to transition into data science and wants to get those hands-on questions that they can work on and practice and know what to expect on a data science technical interview. Next up, we have Data Science from Scratch, First Principles with Python by Joel Gruss. Now, this book was given to me as a gift from my roommate when I was graduating from my PhD program, and I told him I wanted to go into data science, so he gave me this book as a gift. And it's a really, really great book in terms of building foundational knowledge because it covers the sort of philosophical side of things in terms of what is data science. It goes through Python, and then it also covers the things that every data scientist needs to know how to do in terms of how to make and visualize plots, how to run certain kinds of hypothesis tests, know the basics of statistics and probability. And I really like this all because it builds it, as the name suggests, from scratch. It doesn't use sort of prepackaged libraries in Python. It actually, or he actually, I should say, codes up these functions and these complicated machine learning algorithms from scratch. And so it gives you a real sense as to what is really happening fundamentally, mathematically behind the scenes. Because sometimes when you're doing data science, you're going to just be using some library from NumPy or SciPy or Pandas, and you might not really understand what is going on. What is this function doing? And this book breaks that down for you. It goes into how certain machine learning algorithms are built. So for example, this, I believe on this side is a decision tree, and I think he gets into random forests like he says right here. So again, I would really recommend this book if you want to build up your intuition from scratch per se. You wouldn't be doing the day-to-day work with these functions. These are more sort of exercises for you to get comfortable with what the mathematical underpinnings are. So you would need another book to help you with that. And I think that'll be the next book I show you. Ta-da! This is Hands-On Machine Learning with Scikit-Learn, Keras, and TensorFlow, Concepts, Tools, and Techniques to Build Intelligent Systems by Aurélien Géron. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but he's French. And this book is, I think it's got to be up there as one of my most favored books in the subject because it really is such a comprehensive book on machine learning. And the first chapter just tells you what machine learning is before going into an end-to-end machine learning project, and then a chapter on some of the most common machine learning algorithms and topics today. And the final part is on neural networks and deep learning, which is all the rage these days. So I was really studying this part of the book when I first got into deep learning, learning how to use TensorFlow and Keras, convolutional neural nets, RNNs, all the really good stuff. And it even has stuff like autoencoders, GANs, and diffusion models, which are very cutting edge and very recent, chronologically speaking. And so this book is just amazing. I really cannot speak highly enough of this book. I really love at the end here, it has the machine learning checklist, if I could find it. Let's see here. Yeah, the machine learning project checklist, I think, is a very, very great resource for anyone who wants to know what the process is like. I read this checklist fairly often when I'm doing my job, just to sort of get my sense of where am I in the process, what do I need to do next, are there any things that I forgot to do during this stage in terms of exploration or data preparation or fine-tuning, those kinds of things. And it has so many good examples of code and examples of how to apply these algorithms. And I think it's just a very practical hands-on guide that is definitely a must in terms of having this book, because you will be referring to it a lot if you get a data science job and you're being asked to do clustering, or you're doing random forest, or CNN, RNN, that kind of stuff. You will definitely be referring to this book a lot. So the next book on the list is one that I don't have physically, I have it electronically, and it's the Python Data Science Handbook by Jake Vanderplas. It is very similar to Data Science from Scratch by Joel Gruss, but instead of in the From Scratch book where everything is coded from scratch, using fundamental Python, this book will cover the libraries and packages you'd be expected to know how to use on a day-to-day basis. So the book is broken up into, I believe, 5 sections here. So part 1 is Jupyter Beyond Normal Python. Part 2 is Introduction to NumPy. Part 3 is data manipulation with pandas. Part 4 is visualization with matplotlib. And I believe the last part is machine learning. I think it's hard to see, so I'm going to try and get it to focus, though I apologize if it's hard to see there. I would definitely like to pair this book with these 2 books, the Data Science from Scratch, as well as the Hands-On Machine Learning book. I think these are just 3 really good, resourceful, how to use kind of books in terms of using Python to get something accomplished. So can't speak highly enough for this book because Jake is actually a former astronomer like myself. So everyone give a shout out to Jake and his amazingness when it comes to coding and giving us a great resource. The next book that I'm going to cover is also a book that I got electronically, and it's Deep Learning with Python, 2nd edition by Francois Chollet. Now, Francois Chollet is the creator of the software library Keras, which is a very popular machine learning library. It covers a lot of ground similarly to the HandsOn machine learning book, and I believe they're both Frenchmen, which is really interesting, and I believe they're both ex-Google or current Google. I think Francois is current Google, and I think Jérôme is former Google, if not mistaken. So the French and Google connection, what do you know? But they're both really good books. I used this one actually to help me build my first CNN model that was doing computer vision kind of tasks. So it's a really great resource for that. It's overall just a great resource, I think, in terms of, again, practical examples on how to do tasks in Python. So it goes through a really nice set of examples, provides the code on how to do that. And if you follow along with the Jupyter notebooks that they provide on their GitHubs, I'm talking about both Chollet's and Jérôme's book, it's really great. Like if you have the book here, you have the Jupyter notebook that follows the book, and you have your own code and you're following it along, I think you really do learn a lot by going through those exercises. So again, cannot recommend this book enough. I know I've been recommending a lot of books, but they're all very great to bolster your knowledge in machine learning. All right, so we only have 2 books left. We're almost there. And so far we've gone through kind of like introductory books that like cover the theory at sort of a basic level, just introducing you the topics, or books that give you the hands-on practical code on how to implement random forests or CNNs or regression models, clustering models, you name it. But we haven't really covered books, aside from maybe the big textbook by Russell and Norvig, on the theory of, for example, machine learning and deep learning. And these last 2 books will do that. The first one is Deep Learning by Ian Goodfellow, Yashua Bengio, and Aaron Corville. This is a very classic and standard book in the field of deep learning. Unfortunately, it's getting a little bit out of date already because it came out, I believe, in 2016. So it doesn't cover, for example, things like the transformer architecture, which is what powers ChatGPT, which came out, I believe, in 2017. But for everything before it, it's an absolutely great resource in terms of the mathematical know-how of how these things work. And so if you really want to get to the mathematical theory and seeing the equations and knowing how practical, experienced deep learning researchers think about these things, it's a must-get as well. A lot of these books are a must-get, but it really is a must-get. And it does cover the math that it expects you to know. And again, I think that it's great to have, though for the newer developments post-2016, it can feel a little bit out of date. But everything beforehand, if you're a newbie like me, it's fine because you don't know anything. And so starting from the beginning is good and getting up to 2016. And so, again, really cannot speak highly enough of this book. I kind of wish it had more exercises. It doesn't really have any exercises. It's mostly just like a reference book, I would say. and a book that you would want to look at if you're trying to just follow along certain arguments. The math can be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to it, and especially if you're not used to looking at functions like min, max, and floor, and things of that nature, which I wasn't really exposed to that much in my physics education, believe it or not. So it does take some getting used to some of this mathematics. But again, if you really want a book from people who really know what the heck they're doing in deep learning, this is a book for you. And unsurprisingly, I've saved, in my opinion, the best for last. This book is my favorite deep learning textbook, and it recently came out, I believe, last year in 2023, and it is Understanding Deep Learning by Simon J.D. Prince. This is a phenomenal textbook that I cannot speak highly enough about. I liked it so much that I bought the physical and the electronic copy because I wanted to have it on me at all times in case I needed to know something about deep learning. And again, cannot speak highly enough about this book. You can actually get yourself a copy of the draft on his website, which I believe he updates if he finds any typos. So if you go to his website, you can download a PDF of this book for free to use, and I would highly recommend you doing that. So let's go again and just take a look through the table of contents here. And it is similar to the other books we've seen so far in the sense that it covers sort of the basics of machine learning, the different types of learning, such as supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement. But it soon gets to the deep learning stuff, and will kind of stay in that subject matter for the rest of the book. But it does cover a lot of the, sort of the fundamental aspects of performance evaluation, the ideas of gradient descent, stochastic gradient descent, momentum, all these sort of fundamental things that if you want to be a machine learning researcher, you just have to know in terms of how to tune a model, how to know what to change in your analysis, and how to make progress. And because this book was published in 2023, it does cover those things like transformers, as well as things like autoencoders and diffusion models, all of these things that are state-of-the-art today and power a lot of the AI tools out there like ChatGPT, DALL-E, Llama, Grok, you name it. Just if you really want to get a sense of how those things work, you really need to get this book. And again, like the Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach book, the last two chapters, I think, are very accessible to anyone who wants to get into AI and deep learning in general, because they cover kind of the philosophical and metaphysical questions that are being asked in AI in terms of ethics, alignment, why does it work, and things of that nature. I really love those last two chapters. I really recommend that anyone who gets a copy of this book and its PDF really should read those last two chapters almost as soon as you get it, because I think it really gets you up to speed as to what the experts are thinking about and what they're asking and what are the deep questions that we need to hopefully address soon. And I really like the last chapter on ethics, especially because it really just lays out bare what are some of the threats and the problems we're going to face with this technology that is being developed. And I really appreciate the time they took to craft a chapter that was very thoughtful and forward-thinking, in my opinion. And so, again, if you do get a copy of this book, either a physical copy or the draft or the ebook, please read the last two chapters, and I think you'll come away with a better sense of where are we in terms of what we know and what we don't know, and what is so scary but also very exciting about artificial intelligence. Well, that was a lot. But I had a lot of fun showing you my books. I always do. I hope you found it entertaining and helpful for your own machine learning library. Leave a comment below if you have any of these books or are planning to add any of these books in your collection, or if there are any books that I missed that you think are worth me getting. And so with that, I just want to say thank you again for watching. I'll be back with another video soon, and I hope you all have a great evening.